Asadora is shaping up to quite possibly be the strongest Naoki Urasawa work from his entire career. It's just such a shame that the series has continually been on lengthy, soul-crushing hiatuses, owing both to Urasawa's health and the extensive research the story requires because of its historical setting. And I imagine that these hiatuses will only get increasingly longer as Urasawa starts up a second serialization alongside it. But no matter how long it might take to get to that finish line, I'm happy to be able to experience such an amazing manga for myself. And at the end of the day, health comes first. Any fan's enjoyment is entirely secondary to that. Now, without further ado, let's get into discussing Volume 9, the latest volume in the series as of the time of the recording of this video, covering chapters 59 to 65. At this point in time, in terms of chapter count, the manga has now reached the length of Pluto. Though in terms of story progression, we still definitely have a very long way to go until we reach the year 2020 again. We're only in the year 1968. Now, overall, I was a pretty big fan of Volume 9 from a content standpoint. We'd barely gotten started with the life of 21-year-old Asa back in Volume 8, so Volume 9 seems to have really gotten this new arc going. Based on the pacing so far, I would think we might see another time skip in maybe Volume 12 or 13. But with this series, who knows when it'll happen, or how far into the future the next time skip will go. There's only so much that can happen in the span of 7 chapters in an Urasawa series, and Urasawa can take the story literally anywhere. A lot of the time, I split my reviews into 2 sections, one on what I liked and another on what I didn't. But with only 7 chapters' worth of content and how little I disliked from this volume anyway, I figured it would be more appropriate for me to structure this video a little bit differently. I'm instead going to be taking this review highlight by highlight. First up is Asa and River. Honestly, reading the development between these two makes it feel like I'm reading Yawara or Happy all over again. This part of the manga is so reminiscent of Urasawa's earlier romance works, but in Asadora I don't sense any of that status quo absurdity that made the romance stagnate in Urasawa's earlier stories. Because the story has just barely started, I wouldn't go so far as to say that it's already my favorite Urasawa romance just yet, but I really like what I've seen so far, and I'm looking forward to getting more, especially as we continue to learn more about River and his backstory. One interesting thing about their romance is that it's intertwined with the thematic core of so much of Urasawa's bibliography, the power and life-changing potential of art and music specifically. In this case, River, of course, is the artist or musician behind the very song that kept Asa going in the roughest of times. Having the exploration of those art-related themes intertwined with what seems to be the core romance of the story is really interesting. But speaking of romance, let's discuss Sho, the second major highlight for me. In just a few short years since the last arc, Sho's really seen a massive drug-driven descent into madness, to the point of being the figurehead of a cult-like secret society. That feels so reminiscent of 20th Century Boys. Sho's not truly able to fight off the kaiju, but he and most of those around him seem to believe as much. And the way he keeps bringing up not being able to go to the Olympics feels a little reminiscent of everything surrounding the Expo in 20th Century Boys. And funnily enough, the Olympics itself was also critical to Yawara and some stories of Master Keaton. I've called Asadora a combination of Urasawa's bibliography before, with the insanity of something like Billy Bat, but the groundedness of his sports romance manga. The show plot is yet another one of those moments that solidifies that sort of sentiment for me. It really mixes in elements we've seen in so many of his earlier works. It's a little sad seeing what's happened to him since chapter 1 though. He's had it rough. This plotline has barely been introduced so far, but I'm looking forward to seeing where exactly it goes from here. I wonder how Asa would feel if she knew what happened to Sho. All her life she'd been so supportive of him. But to see him like this, that would be heartbreaking. And if Asa and River become a final thing, I can only imagine how Sho would act. His interactions with Keiichi in earlier volumes would point towards something very vitriolic. Speaking of Keiichi, Volume 9 does also feature some Asa and Keiichi teasing as well, and while I don't foresee him and Asa getting together, I also really liked his characterization this volume, specifically the way he's been standing up for Yone. Compared to the past few volumes, the exploitativeness of the entertainment industry, while still heavily explored, takes a bit of a backseat in focus, but I do like how he tried to stop Yone from being overly sexualized on TV in the way that he could. But in any case, on to highlight number 3, familial relationships. Family is a persistent focus across almost all of Urasawa's long-running works, from his sports romance manga to his dark mysteries to even Asadora, which has a mixture of elements of both. This focus remains a constant. Earlier volumes of Asadora delved deep into adoptive familial relationships as well as sibling-sibling relationships, and this specific volume of the series did a little bit to advance the focus on both, though I think the highlights were definitely with respect to the adoptive parental relationships. There's a point in the volume wherein Kyoko asks Kasuga if he's Asa's father or something, to which he straight up just says yes. That to me was just absolutely perfect. Then of course there's also the interactions with Kinuyo. Earlier in the series, Urasawa had established that someone special to Kinuyo never made it back from war. This volume unveils her backstory in significantly greater detail. It hits on its own from a character level standpoint with just how understanding and empathetic she is towards Asa. It completely recontextualizes the gravity of her letting Asa pilot and work for the government. But it's specifically her words on how loved ones should never ever go to war that hit the hardest. And that's really the last major highlight of the volume for me, the anti-war commentary. The vehement opposition to the Vietnam War has been prevalent throughout the last several volumes of the manga, and that continued on in Volume 9, explored through the viewpoints of multiple characters. But perhaps the most significant of these perspectives are that of Kinuyo, as mentioned before, and also the deserters. I like that the deserters specifically bring up Muhammad Ali's decisiveness in refusing to partake in the Vietnam War, despite that stripping him of his heavyweight title and resulting in being sentenced to 5 years in prison. People in those times would have criticized him as unpatriotic, but the story of Asadora depicts him as brave and virtuous, standing up for what was right. And on note of patriotism, so much of Asadora as a series so far has made a huge deal over matters concerning national security. Everything they've been doing to fight the kaiju has been painted from the perspective of trying to ensure the welfare of Japan. But for Asa, even though she's working with the government, she's not really in it for patriotic reasons or anything. Her main motivation is family. And she still wants to help River despite the risk it poses to Japan as a country. With him seemingly staying over with the family now, I'm curious to see where the series heads from here. There's also the whole plotline concerning the kaiju's true identity and supposedly being bipedal. I'm very curious to see where that goes. But all in all, Volume 9, just like the rest of the series preceding it, was a pleasure to read through. Though the wait between chapters and volumes feels agonizingly long at times. It's wild that it's been 3 years since the release of the chapter wherein Asa and River first met. I'm very eager to read more of Asadora, and I hope to see Volume 10 soon enough. I truly think that Asadora has the potential to become Urasawa's best work from his career. But with that in mind, I'll see you next time. Bossman out.